medical advancement. We are here to help you guys through your medical journey. My name is Rosendino. I am a founding member and president of Pre-Health Shadowing, and we're going to start our presentation today, okay? So if you are looking for a mentor, it's really a great opportunity for you guys to meet with someone who can help you throughout your career endeavors. So it will be $3 today for our raffle. And you can either do it through PayPal or Venmo. We have both of the QR codes. So I'll leave this up here for you guys while I explain the event. So our event is going to be February 19th through the 21st. This is where you can meet with up to two potential mentors per day. So it's 6 in total. You can really work your way and meet with them and connect, meet with like-minded people. So if you want to donate and enter our raffle, it is $3. And we also have PayPal and Venmo, just to reiterate. Leave this up here for a few more seconds. And for those of us who just joined, this is for our mentorship weekend, okay? All right, we also have closed captionings. So you can go ahead and look down at the bottom of your screen and click closed captionings if you'd like. And if you have any questions about any of this, you can email us at info@prehealthshadowing.com. So where are you zooming in from? You can go ahead and drop it down in the chat. Do you guys want to stay in loop with us? Because that would be really cool. We do have a social media. We have Instagram and TikTok. Those are our two main platforms where we find the most reach. If you want, you can sign up for our email list and follow us on social media so you never miss a session. And we have a lot of great opportunities and partnerships. Our first one is with Kaplan. We have a 10% off of Kaplan courses, and you can also receive free study guides for the MCAT, GRE, PCAT, NCLEX, and more. So this is a really great opportunity. And you can get more information with the link that is going to be dropped in the chat. And our next partnership is with Help. This is a really amazing opportunity for you guys if you want to meet with strong female careers, and you can meet with someone who's been on Shark Tank at multi-million-dollar companies. It's just a really amazing opportunity to learn from them and do this internship. So you can either enter our raffles during our February live sessions, or you can submit a 350 word essay or 2-minute video about what's your passion, why Health, and why do you want to attend. This is a really great opportunity for anyone who wants to do this. And we also have Mask for Mask. So this is where you can buy 4 masks. We do have a 15% off if you have the code PHS15, and 10% of the proceedings will go to Pre-Health Shadowing. And since you buy 4 masks will be donated to homeless communities, under-resourced hospitals, and others who may be in need of the mask during this global pandemic. We all wear masks, so this is a really great opportunity to get some really cute ones and also donate at the same time. And if you're interested in becoming a part of Pre-Health Shadowing, we do have 2 opportunities for you guys. You can either click this link, or you can't click it, I'm sorry. You can click the link in the chat to become a student volunteer or a team member. So the difference between a volunteer and a team member is the team member will be doing a lot of the projects to help keep Pre-Health Shadowing running and helping out with all the projects we do. Volunteering is like you're offering up your time whenever you want, whether it's 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon, wherever you want, wherever you are, you can volunteer and help us to create a better world for pre-health students. And if you are a high school student, this is for you. We do have our new HTP team. We are offering leadership, healthcare educations for pre-college learners. This is a really great way to get started now and just help further you in your career. And it looks really great on applications too. Okay, and if you're looking to get published, Pre-Health Shadowing does have a blog. You can submit articles, reflections, reviews, or success stories, and we will review it and let you know if it's going to be on our blog. This will go on our main site, just so you know if you want to be published. And if you can, please donate. We do have a lot of people on our website and on our Zoom, and we would love to keep this up and running for you guys for free. So if you can donate, if you can't, maybe like take a screenshot of the QR code and send it to someone who you know could possibly donate. We want to keep Pre-Health Shadowing free for you guys. So if you can help in any way, that'd be amazing. We do rely solely on donations, or grants that we're working on. So I'll leave this up here for a few more seconds. Okay, and if you have any questions throughout the duration of our session, you can type it in the chat and our co-hosts will reveal them during the Q&A portion, okay? And take good notes because there will be a post-shadowing assessment. It'll just be able for you guys to take the assessment. It's super quick and easy, 10 questions, and you have 30 minutes to take it. And this is how you're going to get your certification. And if you want, like, keep your cameras on so that our speaker has someone to talk to. You don't want to talk to an empty room. So we want to see your pretty faces. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation, and I would like to introduce you to our speaker. If you want to share your screen.
Hey, okay, give me a second. Yes. Is it working?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay. Alrighty. Hey everyone, how are y'all? My name is Malone Otwell. I am a certified prosthetist and orthotist. I am currently working in Columbus, Georgia. First of all, bravo to this incredible team here. Y'all have put together such an amazing platform that I'm sure is getting utilized all over the country. And it's so wonderful that y'all have taken your time and your effort into putting something like this together for other students. So let's begin. So I guess just a couple of disclaimers. My company has nothing to do with this. My previous residency site and or company that I worked for, they have nothing to do with this. All of my photos are personal photos of patients. They have signed releases with me. So everything is just me. These are my opinions and these are my thoughts on the world of prosthetics. So we're going to do a little overview. I'm going to make this super simple because prosthetics can get pretty in depth, but I want to give y'all a really good overview so that when you leave this presentation, you're like, okay, I have a good idea of what it would be to be a prosthetist. So I'm going to talk a little bit about me, obviously what prosthetics and the world of prosthetics entails, go through the basics so you can kind of get a little bit of background information, and then the entire process of how we design, fit, and fabricate a prosthesis for the patient. And then I'll end on the education portion just so that y'all know the process it takes to become a prosthetist. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Georgia. I went to University of Georgia for my undergrad. Go Dogs forever. I have a bachelor's in psychology. I knew that I wanted to do psychology if I could. It's very interesting, obviously. I then went to grad school at Georgia Tech, which is in Atlanta, and I got my master's of science in prosthetics and orthotics there, and we'll talk more about that in the end. Some of the things that I love about this field is there's lots of opportunities to volunteer. I work with a company called Prosthetic Promises in his name, and they are a team that travels to Zambia. Normally it's twice a year, but with everything, with COVID, that has been pushed back multiple times. So technically our next trip is not supposed to be until August of this year, but we go there basically for 2 weeks. And the first week we're just seeing patients. And then the second week we're fabricating them and then fitting them. So it's a jam-packed couple of weeks, but it's really cool because these patients have no other access to prosthetics of any kind. There's also a ocularist that comes, and so he does prosthetic eyes, which is different, but also very cool and very needed in Zambia. I do have some published research. My capstone for undergrad ended up getting published a couple of years later, so that's kind of cool to be able to say I've published research. It was in upper extremity prosthetics, and we can talk more about that later if y'all would like. So for me, I knew I wanted to be in the medical profession, but I didn't necessarily want to spend my young adult life in school. And that's, for some people, it just wasn't for me. I wanted to be able to get down into the nitty gritty with my patients pretty early on. So I knew I wanted to kind of go that route. My family, they are also prosthetists. So my uncle and then his 3 sons are also prosthetists and orthotists. They grew up in Arkansas. So while I didn't get direct connections with them seeing patients, but I did hear lots of cool stories. My uncle went overseas and did lots of mission work with the Red Cross as well. So it just was really interesting to me. Obviously, a desk job was not ever in my playbook. So being able to have my family in it as well was a really cool aspect for me. Obviously, it's a hands-on working environment. I am obviously fabricating and designing these. I mean, I'm working with power tools, I'm working with drill presses, grinders. So my hands are not pretty, don't look at them, but it is fun to be able to work with your hands on a daily basis. Obviously, this field is a very humbling field to be in. These amputees have changed my life 100%. And that is something that could never be replaced in my life. I like to think that I'm helping them and making a difference in their life, but in all honesty, they are truly changing me, which is amazing to be able to come to work every day and be able to experience that. Also, the creativity that you get to have in the world of prosthetics is pretty insane. We're going to get into that a little bit more, but you really get to have some fun with it. And that definitely pulled at me a little bit. I love having a creative side. Being able to intertwine that into my profession was kind of a no-brainer for me. So a prosthetist is someone who designs, fits, and fabricates for an amputee. We are strictly dealing with extremities for the most part as a prosthetist. Upper extremity, lower extremity, I'll go into a little bit more detail of the specifics of those. And then an orthotist is, I always just say, well, an orthosis is just a fancy word for brace. So a knee brace, a back brace, a neck brace, and an orthotist fits an orthosis to a patient. So we do a little bit of everything. I am a certified prosthetist and orthotist. Currently, I am working primarily as a prosthetist. I do see some orthotics, but prosthetics is where my heart is. So I just got certified in orthotics as well because, I paid for school, so might as well get certified in it. Okay, so this is a lot on a screen, but I'm going to kind of break it down for you a little bit. So there are different levels of amputation. For lower extremity, the main 2 types of amputation levels are transtibial and transfemoral. So transtibial is below knee. Sometimes you'll hear patients be called BK amputees. That stands for below knee amputees. And a transfem patient is sometimes called an AK, which stands for above knee amputee. Those are the 2 most common types of lower extremity amputees, but we also have CIMs, knee dysartics, hip dysartics, which basically those amputations are going through the joint of the hip and the knee. And then the CIMs they're taking, it's kind of, no one really does them anymore, but some people do. Some surgeons do, but they're basically taking the pad, the heel pad, and they're putting it up under the malleoli, which are your ankle bones, so that you have a good weight bearing limb. In transtibial and transfemoral, the patient is not actually bearing weight on the distal end. And when I say distal end, I mean the bottom of their limb. I'm going to try to break down all of the terms that we use so that everyone can understand them, because I know that every field is a little weird. So they're not actually taking weight on there. So with the Symes amputation, you actually are able to take weight, which was the purpose of them creating that type of amputation. It's just kind of outdated, and we can do a lot more now if you would just cut the rest of it off and make it a transtibial. Now that sounds kind of harsh, but it's the truth. So for upper extremity, our main two types are transradial and transhumeral. Once again, cutting through the radius and then cutting through the humerus. There's also partial hand, so if any type of your digits are missing, and then wristus articulatus are the same. You're basically getting that amputation through the wrist. You see predominantly a lower extremity. You're not going to see a ton of upper extremity. I think the last time they came out with something, it was like 10% of your patients are going to be upper extremity. So pretty minor. Now there are places that specialize. So I know there's a place in Kansas City that specializes in upper extremity prosthetics. So that's literally all they do. And that is very cool. So the types of amputations as well, you have congenital, which basically just means they were born that way. You have traumatic, which means that they were either in a car accident, a motor vehicle accident, they fell from something, shattered something, and had to be amputated, or vascular. Basically, the circulation wasn't optimally running through their body to bring in good blood and take out the bad blood and keep infections out of the limb. So they had to amputate people with diabetes, any type of vascular disease. Most of the time their amputations are coming from that. Oh, side note, does anyone have an amputee in their life? If you want to write that down in the chat, or if you don't have an amputee in your life, have you seen an amputee? Like, do y'all have a knowledge of what amputees look like in real life? I don't know how to, oh shoot. I was going to say, I don't know how to view the chat.
Oh, someone says they have worked with amputee cats.
Cats?
They've seen some, but they have no personal relations. Some have seen amputees at nursing homes.
Yep, those are common places that we go to see amputees. Well, I just was curious what y'all thought about that. So, okay, moving on. So how we keep a prosthesis on the limb, especially lower extremity when they're walking. Suspension means, how do we keep it from when they're walking from flying off of their leg? Well, there's a couple of different types, and there's many more than the type that I have listed, but these are probably the most common ones. You have a shuttle lock, which has a pin that is attached to the liner. So actually Ashley in this picture next to me, she is in a pin lock system, which is the same thing as a shuttle lock. So she's wearing a liner, which is a gel material that is rolled onto their leg, and it basically just grips their leg. And then there's a pin that's screwed into the end of it, and that locks down into their socket. There's a button that you hit if you want to take the prosthesis off. So that's one of the main kinds. Suction is exactly what you think it is. We basically have a sleeve that we roll on over the outside of her prosthesis. Her liner does not have the pin in it. And every time she is taking a step, it's pulling air out of her socket and creating a suction fit socket. Suction and vacuum fit sockets, they increase their proprioception, which to them means, oh, well, this limb feels like it's more a part of me. It feels like I am one with it, where sometimes a shuttle lock doesn't necessarily have that effect. You're going to put suction and vacuum on maybe your more active amputees, probably not your brand new amputee, just because there's a lot of fluid and edema in their limb from surgery. So a vacuum suspension is basically active. It's pulling the air out of the socket actively, whether it's a mechanical pump or it's done electrically. And once again, it's just another form of suspension, and it's great for our super active amputees. A lanyard or a KISS system is what they call it. It's done a lot of the time in AKs, transfem patients. It's a very safe donning mechanism, and that basically just means that they can put it on while they're sitting down, so it's a safety aspect. Some of these prostheses, it's best to put on while you're standing, and obviously if I have an elderly woman, I'm not going to be able to put her in one of those type of suspension methods. I'm going to have to kind of give her something that's a little more safe for her to be able to don properly and safely. So next are activity levels, and these activity levels really have nothing to do with us per se, but everything to do with insurance. So insurance requires us to label our patient based off of their activity level. And when we pick those activity levels, that also determines the type of components we can put on there. If we can put a mechanical knee, or if we can put a microprocessor knee, are they going to be a high enough activity patient that can tolerate that type of component, rather than someone who's really just using their prosthesis for transferring around their house? Someone who's transferring around the house doesn't need to have a $60,000 knee. So we have to label these patients based off of what we believe their K level is. Now, a lot of states are moving towards getting your physical therapists to determine the K level, just so it is an unbiased person choosing that K level. It has nothing to do with us. We have multiple people that are saying that, yes, she is a K3 amputee. And the way PTs do it, and the way we do it too, I'll run outcome measures on patients as well, but they have an amputee mobility predictor. And that basically just runs them through a series of steps. It has lots and lots of research to back it up. But it basically, at the very end, you do a little bit of math and it computes and tells you what K level your patient is. So activity levels, K levels are really very important in our daily prosthetic life, just because that's really what's going to help determine what type of components that patient can get. So a day in the life of a prosthetist, it's really no day is the same, which is great, because sometimes I feel like I get a little ADD, and that's nice. So we do a lot of hospital consults. So that either looks like me going in and talking to a patient prior to their amputation, if they have the ability to be able to chat with me beforehand if it wasn't a traumatic amputation, or sometimes I'm talking with them after their amputation, where they still have sutures in their limb and they are swollen, and they are most of the time when I go in there, they're kind of freaking out, and I have to tell them, you know, your life is not over. We can easily get you back to your activities of daily living, and you'll be able to do everything that you set out to do from the beginning. So those hospital consults are always really fun for me, just because I feel like I'm kind of putting someone at ease and making sure that they feel good and comfortable about the steps that are going to come, and that I'm there with them through it, and that, you know, it's one less thing for them to really have to stress about. So prosthetic evaluations, also something that we do every day. So once they come out of the hospital, they'll come to me. Sometimes their sutures or their staples are taken out. Sometimes they're not. Most of the time on that visit, I am fitting them in a shrinker, which means that it's basically like a compression hose stocking. So it is just applying pressure on the limb to help reduce the edema and the fluid that is in their limb from surgery. The reason that we have to do that is, let's say I didn't do that and I casted them immediately, made a socket and a prosthesis from that. They'd only be able to wear that socket for a couple of days a week, because they would shrink out of it so quickly. So getting all of the fluid and the edema out initially is best for you and the patient. They're going to be more comfortable in it for the long haul, and it honestly just makes more sense. So after that, sometimes I will fit them in a liner prior, depending on how much swelling they have. One thing to know is that really every patient is so different. So you can't just say, oh, I do this, this, and this, because everything is patient dependent, and figuring out your process and your steps is all going to be based off that patient and their needs. But so after the liner and or the shrinker, then we'll do the casting. And so we make that with just a plaster of Paris cast, and I'm going to break all of these things down a little bit more too. But there's lots of different types of casting methods, but it's the next step. Following that is a test socket fitting or a diagnostic fitting. So from that cast, we make a test socket. The patient is able to stand in it, say, hey, it feels good here, it doesn't feel good here. And that helps us with our modifications to know what we need to do for their final or definitive prosthesis. So the definitive prosthesis is the next part, which is the part that says prosthetic deliveries. And we do a little bit of gait training there and get them comfortable, get some bench alignment going. And I'm going to talk about that more. But doing any kind of adjustments on a daily basis. So sometimes a patient will come in for 30 minutes and say, hey, like my knee feels kind of like it's doing this, and we'll make some tweaks and make it so that it walks properly for them again. That's one thing to note too, is just because once we're done seeing a patient doesn't mean we're done seeing the patient. They will continually need to come back for adjustments as their body and their musculature changes, especially new amputees. If they atrophy, which basically just means if that muscle kind of withers away from not being used, and or muscle strength is gained in some areas, we're going to have to change their alignment based on that. And then the part that no one in the medical field loves is notes. Notes are just part of it and inevitable, and you got to do it in any medical profession. So get used to it. So this is just a brief overview of how we make a prosthesis. I'm going to break everything down, but this is one of my patients at my previous location. Her name is Ashley, and you'll see her throughout this slideshow because I used her for all of my guinea pig things. But so we cast her, mark those bony landmarks, and then from there, I'm going to fill this with plaster, and then I'm going to draw trim lines and modify it, and make sure that it has all of the correct buildups or takeaways that her prosthesis needs. We then go on and we do the test socket, which is that clear Vivac material is what we call it. And we'll do a static test socket fitting. Sometimes you can do a dynamic if you need to. With her, she just needed a static. We mix her skin color because that's what she wanted to do for this prosthesis. And there she is. She looks great. You'll see her many more times. But so brief overview. And now I'm going to break all of those things down. So for casting, like I said, there's multiple different types of methods for casting, depending on the type of suspension that you're doing, the patient's anatomy. If they have, like this guy, he's a big dude. So I did a different casting method than I would do for someone who had super bony anatomy. So within your patient's limb, you have pressure tolerant and intolerant areas. Like you can kind of see on the bottom where I have these labeled. But so the areas that can't tolerate pressure, I'm actually building those up when I modify. And the areas that can tolerate pressure, that's where I'm putting extra pressure. So if you remember before when I said these patients are not actually taking weight on the distal end of their limb. So we're suspending them up through there. So knowing where we can add a lot of pressure and where we can take a lot of pressure away from, that is important for these amputees to be able to walk comfortably in the end. So the cast and the test socket, in my opinion, is the most important part of being able to get a good fit for these amputees. So here's modifying the socket. Once again, fill this with plaster. Then we transfer those landmarks that I took originally, modify a lot. Most of the time we're reducing globally 3%. That just helps. As the patient continues to go week from week, they're going to lose edema anyway, especially a new amputee. So this is kind of helping go forward a little bit so that when I fit her in this test socket or whoever in this test socket, that it still fits comfortably and I know that they're not taking weight at the distal end. So then I'm going to draw trim lines. And once again, these are the pressure tolerant, intolerant areas. And then we smooth it like crazy and I get it ready for my tech to pull the test socket. So lamination is really where you get to be creative. So you can see in this one, we're doing a sparkly prosthesis, which was kind of my thing back in Arkansas. So, but there's lots of different kinds. So some people want the standard skin colored, and then we put foam in there and we'll take measurements from their contralateral side, their intact side, and make it so that the legs match on each side. We do that fairly regularly. I had one patient that I was working on the end. I think it was at the very beginning of my presentation. We were making a socket that actually changed colors based off of heat temperature. So that was one that was really fun. In Arkansas, I did a lot of camo sockets. Everyone wanted camo. Spent a lot of time at Academy Sports looking through camo shirts, which was not necessarily anything that I thought that I was going to be doing. Lots of people want, I'm going to play this again while we're waiting. Like football teams, especially here in the South, everyone wants to rep their team. So doing it with a t-shirt. So everything that we laminate has to be done in fabric. Some people think, oh, it's a decal, but it's really a t-shirt. So being able to just patients be able to be creative themselves. I had one lady who got a t-shirt made and it had the faces of all her cats on there, and she wanted that on her leg, and it was cool and she loved it, and that's just made me happy. So your carbon layup is based off of your patient's weight and their activity level. So with Ashley here, she's obviously like 100 pounds. So her carbon layup was pretty minimal. I think it was probably like 1.5. Whereas if I have someone who's 300 pounds, I'm going to do, 4 layers of carbon, or potentially more, just depending on how active that patient is. I didn't know if the music was going to play. I don't know if y'all can hear this or not. But the song is walking out and all the patients are walking. So that's kind of fun. I don't necessarily know how to mute it. Okay. Maybe. So doing initial alignment for a prosthesis, we're wanting to make sure that that patient's height is just right. If the patient is too tall or too low on one side, it's going to affect their gait. Especially if it's too tall, it really adds a lot of different socket pressures in there. So it's really important to get the height right. And then I move on to flexion extension of the socket. So flexion extension and AB and adduction are the angular or linear changes that we make within the socket. So as I've said before, because they don't take weight, we are applying pressure in different areas of that socket. So if we take pressure away from somewhere, we're placing it somewhere else. So getting that fit just right so that they walk comfortably and without any gait deviations, that's where we're looking to get at that first alignment with the prosthesis. Now, like I said before, as they start to walk and get used to the prosthesis, we're going to have to change some of the alignment that we do for those patients. So it's not just a one and done kind of thing. If you're working with someone who's a AK, we're having to make sure that internal, external rotation of the knee and the foot is done properly. If it's not, they're going to have a crazy whip and they're going to be very confused. So getting all of those things right is what we're going for, and then making sure that they don't have any gait deviations, whether that's hip hiking or vaulting or circumducting. And sometimes those things are kind of hard to work out depending on how long the patient was down for in a wheelchair. They could have hip flexion contractures or knee flexion contractures, and that's when we really rely on our PTs to really be able to get in there and work some of those contractures out so that the patients can really walk the best that they can. And where I work now, I literally have our PTs next door, which is the best thing ever. It's like what you pray for as a prosthetist, because so my patients go over there, and if they need a little tweak, a little alignment change, I can just walk over there while they're in PT, make those alignment changes. And then if I need to do more, then I can schedule an appointment afterwards. But it just helps get an immediate relief to the patient, and the PTs love it as well. So education wise, so let me backtrack a little bit, because this field back prior to World War I, I believe, was actually part of a trade field. I think we were technically somehow or another grouped together with like tattoo artists and plumbers. I don't really know if that's correct. Don't quote me on that, but I remember hearing that somewhere. And so after World War I, after any war for that fact, the government puts lots of money in the world of prosthetics, and that's when all of the advancements happen in our field. So we're relatively new into the medical field, considering we've been around for a long time. So the way that the education is done is constantly evolving and changing. So some of this I'm going to explain was how it was when I was there, but most of it is how it currently is. So for undergrad, one of the coolest things I think about this field is that most of these schools, which I think there's like 13 grad schools, as long as you go on their website and look at their prerequisites, you can basically major in anything, which is really cool because you're still being able to be you, what you love, what you're passionate about in undergrad, major wise. So I was a psych major, but in my class of grad students, there were 14 of us. I had a chemistry major, a music major, neuroscience, kinesiology, BME, ME. I mean, we had a whole range. So it was really cool to see how all of our minds work differently, but at the same time, we're working together in the same field. So I just think it's really cool that you're able to kind of still do what you love in undergrad, and you can still become a prosthetist and orthotist if you want to with that major. I feel like not a whole lot of medical professions are like that. So I really think that's awesome that prosthetics allows you to be able to have that creativity in your undergrad. So your graduate program is a 2 years master program. It's 48 credits, 500 clinical hours. Most of those clinical hours are done in the summer times, along with your research. So most grad school programs are requiring a capstone research project. Some schools allow you to be a little more involved clinically, and a little less involved research-wise. And then some allow you, if you want to do more research, to do more research and to do less of the clinical. So looking into knowing what type of grad school you want to go to is key for that as well. So after you do grad school, then you're going to do your residency. And they have it set up 2 different ways. So you can do a year of prosthetics and a year of orthotics, which in all honesty, by the time you've done your year, you've got all the paperwork in, sometimes you've already had to move to a secondary location, depending on if your current residency site does prosthetics and orthotics. It ends up being about a year and a half for each, realistically. They do have an 18-month combined, and I have friends that did it, and I mentored a couple of students who have done it as well. I'm not a huge fan of it. I just think you get to really focus in on one and then the other separately, and I think you just get a better feel and a better education part with your mentor that way. So it always ends up being a little bit longer than expected. I would say about half and half of your residency programs are going to do prosthetics and orthotics, and then the other half, they will solely do prosthetics, and then you have to find a different residency for orthotics. Your master's program will help set up interviews for you to be able to do them. Sometimes you'll have different programs come to your school and they will just interview your entire class in one day. There's a couple of different routes you can go. It's not like a medical residency where you have a match day. I think it will eventually get to where it is a match day type interview process, but it's not there yet. So after you do your residencies, you have 3 board exams. So what I have written down is how it was for me. The only difference is now is right after grad school, you can take a combined written exam that consists of prosthetics and orthotics, which is really great. It's not that the schools now are teaching to the test, but they are kind of getting your brain ready to take that test. So you can take that right out of grad school, which I think is huge, because otherwise, look, I'm taking 3 different exams for each scope of practice. So it ends up being a lot. But you still will have your simulation exam for prosthetics and your simulation exam for orthotics, which is done on a computer, and you're basically going through real life scenarios with those type of patients. And then your clinical practice exam, you'll still have 2 of those, prosthetics and orthotics, and that's done in person at Tampa. There's only one location and you got to go. It's offered, I think, 2 or 3 times a year, and that's where you go to take your exams. You're actually working with amputees or people who are needing orthotic devices. So it is very real life, and you have a proctor that stays with you the whole time, and you're being graded, and it's very hands-on, but I think it's a really good way that they're testing the knowledge coming out of residency and masters. So schooling tips. So during undergrad, I would say the biggest thing you could do is rotate or get an internship at some different prosthetic and orthotic facilities. So there's different kinds. You have a private practice, which is where I did my residency. You have the VA, which is going to operate completely different. You're going to have just your hospitals. If you have a children's hospital, like Children's or Shriners, those all operate completely differently from one another. If you go to somewhere, like I said, in Kansas City that offers a specialty, they're going to operate completely different. And really understanding what this field is about. What two of the classmates in the class below me, they got into the master's, and about, I think they made it a semester and a half, they just realized that prosthetics and orthotics was not actually what they thought it was. They were expecting it to be a lot more robotics, and that's really just not what it is. It's much more clinically based than people realize. So really knowing what you're getting into. I obviously knew with my family, I didn't say this earlier, but I think it's a really fun fact. So my uncle, he was a prosthetist for 35 years, and then he had a traumatic accident and became an amputee himself. So he was a wonderful mentor that had lots of experience, but then actually becoming an amputee. I'm not an amputee, but I feel like I have a good idea because I went through that with him. So it's cool to be able to really know what you're getting into, getting to know amputees and what they go through. And if that's something that you want to be able to do, I felt like my psych background really benefited me because I wanted to talk and help get these patients through what they're going through, other than just getting them a prosthesis that they can walk on, mentally getting them prepared to getting back to a regular type of lifestyle. Their new normal is what we say. So also, taking a pottery class, and I know that sounds weird, but we work with a lot of plaster. So being able to learn how malleable the different types and consistencies of plaster, and knowing how long you have to work with that, and being able to sculpt it and mold it, it would really set you apart. Getting in, if you can put that on your resume that you took a pottery class, they're gonna be like, okay, they definitely know what they're doing and they want to be here. It's also just going to put you farther ahead with all of your other classmates. They're going to be like, whoa, how do you know how to do this so well already? Next is visiting the program. I know there's only 13, so I think that's actually, it's only like 11 states because there are a couple that are in the same state. But if you can go, because most of them do not do in-face interviews. So with Georgia Tech, I knew I wanted to go there because I didn't want to pay out-of-state tuition, which also tip, if you are lucky and you happen to live in a state where there is an MSPO program, go there, because all of the programs, you're going to end up with an MSPO degree. But if you go to an out-of-state program, you're going to have twice the amount of student loans. So you're going to get a degree. You're going to have to go through residency and boards like everyone else. Go somewhere where it's in state and save yourself 20 grand, 30 grand. Actually more than that. Don't do math. So being able to go to the programs and letting them see you. I went twice before I had even sent in my application to Georgia Tech. So by the time they had gotten my application, they were like, okay, this girl has basically annoyed us to death. We're going to let her in so that she doesn't continue to apply. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe. But luckily I got in the first time, so I didn't have to continue to annoy them in showing up at their school. So during grad school, also being able to kind of gather different board materials that you need. It is nicer, like I said, that they are kind of gearing you up, getting you ready to take those exams. Researching different residency sites. There are residency sites all over the United States. I think it's cool to be able to go somewhere for a couple of years that you probably won't live in. Like I had a lot of friends that went and did their residency in California. They wanted to live there for a little while, but they knew they'd probably end up back in Georgia at some point in time, which they did. But it's cool to be able to have the opportunity for a year or two to be able to live in a different state or somewhere where you wanted to try out living. Yeah, I think that's really it about residencies. Okay, questions?
Thank you so much, Ms. Otwell. This was a wonderful presentation. We learned a lot from it. We got a lot of questions in the chat, so we'll get right into it. I will also offer that if anybody in the room wants to come on mic and ask your question directly, please raise your hand and we can help facilitate that. All right, so one of the first questions we got was, what are the most common levels and types of amputations that you've seen in your practice?
So I primarily are seeing transtibial and transfemoral amputations. I see them all day, every day. Occasionally I'll get some upper extremity patients in there, but for the most part, I'm seeing transtibial and transfem.
Wonderful. How has this line of work changed you as a person?
You know, I think that, in all honesty, just being real, I think I look at people with disabilities differently. They always have such a sense of humor, and I think people automatically kind of go into seeing, if they see someone who's missing a leg or an arm, you know, oh, I'm so sorry, I feel awful. They're fine, and they most of the time are going to crack a joke before you can even think that they're going to. So I have a real respect for them, and just their zeal for life. Honestly, it really puts things into perspective too. I could have a bad day, but at the end of the day, my patients are showing me up because they're happy, beautiful, humble people, and they put me in my place on a regular basis.
That's such a wonderful perspective to have. Thanks for sharing. We got a lot of questions about patients with phantom limb pains and how you might deal with that case.
Yeah, so a lot of phantom limb definitely happens post-surgery. The good news is that most of the time, once patients start walking and getting moving, getting that limb moving through the motions and those muscles start to work, a lot of the time that phantom limb pain starts to go away. Now, the phantom limb sensations will always be there. So we always want to distinguish between the sensation and the pain. Like I said, most of the time the pain goes away, but like I said, I have had tons of patients that the phantom pain is something that they really struggle with. And sometimes a doctor will put them on gabapentin. I'm not a huge fan of that, but a lot of patients do it, especially in the beginning. And I totally understand their call on that. Also, mirror therapy works well, basically where you're putting like you would take like a door mirror and put it along the midline of their body, and so that they're looking at their intact legs. So it looks like they're actually seeing both of their intact legs. Sometimes that helps. I've had some success with that. It's not done a whole lot. I have some patients that hot baths, really, really hot baths are the kicker to get rid of the pain. And some really like cold showers. So I think it just kind of depends on the amputee. And sometimes you kind of got to figure out what works and try different things to see what works best for them. But there are a couple of different avenues that we can go down. But luckily, most of the pain goes away when they start ambulating.
Wonderful. How long does it typically take to make a prosthetic? For example, the TikTok you showed, how long would that have taken?
So if we're talking strictly about the lamination part of it, it only takes a couple of hours. But if you're talking from beginning to the end, that takes weeks because we're having to do things as the patient is reducing with their edema. So I see them normally on a weekly basis. So from the shrinker to the liner fitting to the casting to the test socket to the delivery can be anywhere from 5 to 7 weeks. But the actual fabrication of the prosthesis is much more minimal.
Nice. Yeah. Some question. Oh, sorry. Someone that raised their hand. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead, Kat.
Yeah, I definitely got a question. In the ED, I've seen some double amputees, and I've heard from the prosthetists over at St. Louis University that they have to, after surgery, shrink their legs. And I want to know exactly what the shrink device looks like.
Yeah, so not just with bilateral amputees, but with any of the amputees, when they say shrinking the leg, they're basically just talking about getting the fluid and the edema out of their limb so that their limb is small. Most of the time when a patient comes out of surgery, their limb looks like a light bulb. So it's skinny around the knee and then it goes up into a light bulb shape. Well, I could probably get that limb into a socket, but then think about getting it out. It's going to get stuck. So we have to get their limb shaped down to either a conical or a cylindrical shape so that we can get that patient in and out of the socket of the prosthesis. Did that answer your question?
And also, I have another thing. when they come out of surgery, do you start shrinking their leg after post-operation, or do you wait a day and then shrink their leg?
So that's kind of the surgeon's call. Sometimes they'll call us in right away. But most of the time they're waiting a week or so. Some surgeons really like for us to get a shrinker on them while the sutures or the staples are still present, and others really want us to wait until after the sutures or the staples have been removed. So that part's kind of the surgeon's call.
And does it hurt? Does it hurt the patient?
To put the shrinker on initially, it's probably not the most comfortable thing. It's really rushed rehab, but it does really help initially. As soon as we can get that patient in a shrinker, the better that they're going to be and the faster that the process is going to go. Also, too, a lot of the times in the beginning, they are on lots of pain meds, which helps with their limb feeling sore. It will feel sore, though, most of the time initially when I'm putting that first shrinker on. They are very sore, but they get used to it very quickly, which is another benefit of the shrinker, because if they're that sore, how in the world are we going to be able to put pressure on that limb to be able to suspend them for them to be able to walk? So lots of purposes with the shrinker.
And one last question before I leave. Do you recommend water therapy to an amputee for their prosthesis in water therapy?
Yeah, so I grew up competitively swimming. I'm actually on the Masters swim team now. So I love the idea of any type of water therapy, the resistance that it provides you, but it's safe on all of your joints. I'm a huge proponent of that. Yes, 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 all the way, water therapy.
I do have to go, but I want to thank you for your time, Doctor.
Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Kat, for all your questions. Have a good one. Yeah, if anybody else wants to ask some questions, I will ask that you please raise your hand using the Zoom feature, just so I can see who's raising their hand, because I couldn't see just on camera. Yeah, so we'll get back into questions. Kind of going to that topic between you, like your relationship between you and a surgeon who's making that call. We did a question about what's the difference between a prosthetist, orthotist versus a PM&R doctor.
Yeah, so your PM&R doctor is someone who's potentially doing the surgery. A prosthetist, like I said, I just have a master's degree in residency. So they're going in, we work with PM&R doctors regularly. They send us patients all the time. But they're the ones that are going to be going in and doing that surgery. And we're going to be there to help fit the prosthesis and get the process started.
It's amazing. So I know you touched on this a little bit during your presentation, but how has your psychology background benefited you in this line of work?
Yeah, I think that one of the classes that was actually required for Georgia Tech, which I was slightly surprised at, was an abnormal psych class. And I think that class did a really good job of being able to get me ready to be able to work with these amputees. And it's really just getting to know them, really getting on their level and feeling comfortable with them. I think the biggest obstacle psych-wise is feeling sorry for the patient. And that is the last thing that you need to feel with these patients. You need to be able to build them up and make them feel excited about what's going to happen. And I feel like my psych degree kind of helped with that. And it makes me feel confident in being able to make them feel confident, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting perspective. Thanks for sharing that. Next question is, what was your most inspirational case?
Cool. Okay, so probably the one that made the biggest difference in my life. She kind of popped. Oh, it's Brittany right here.
Oh.
So Brittany, when she came to me, she was my age, my height. We kind of look similar. She was one of my first patients that made a really big impression on me because she lost her leg and I felt like I was looking at myself. Everything that she was going through would have been what I was going through at that time. So it really put it in perspective for me. She definitely pushed me just like I would have pushed whoever my prosthetist was. She drove me crazy, but I absolutely love and adore her. And if she's watching, hi. Yeah, her working with her was a game changer for me and kind of put into perspective how I wanted to be as a prosthetist for my career.
That's amazing. I really appreciate you sharing that story with us. So our next question is, was there anything you didn't expect going into this career? I know your family has the history of in this line of work, but was there anything you weren't expecting?
Um, You know, honestly, I feel like I was very lucky and I really did have a good feel for what this field was about. But I will say the most common misconception is kind of, I touched on it before, is thinking that this is much more of a robotics field. And there is that option. You can kind of get into this field and going more into the research side of things. You definitely have that avenue, but predominantly, if you're in the clinical field, you're going to be working with these patients every day, and it is a lot less of designing futuristic prosthetics and using your engineering degree. That's definitely the biggest misconception, and I've seen lots of students end up opting out because it's just not what they thought it was, which is why it's so crucial to be able to go in and rotate with a couple of places. I guarantee you, if you call, I mean, things are a little bit harder right now with COVID, but once all of this starts to let up, P&O offices would love to have students there because this is a field that's kind of underrated. Not a lot of people know about it. Not a lot of people are even thinking about amputees on a regular basis. So any type of prosthetist for the most part is going to want to have students come in and learn about this field because it is a cool field. It just doesn't have as much exposure as other fields.
Yeah, for sure. And that kind of goes along with another question that we got in the chat was, what is the curriculum like for an orthotist, prosthetist? Because it seems like you have to be really knowledgeable in a wide range of fields from anatomy, physiology to visual design and manufacturing.
You do. It is a pretty wide field, but I will say, especially for me in grad school, so I was not an engineering type of person. My brain does not work that way. And that's okay. That's what's cool about this field. And your professors know that as well. They know that when they're taking in these very different types of students, that some are going to excel in areas of the curriculum where others are not. And they really work with you. So my areas where I had a lot of physics-based calculus, like those professors, I worked with them and they were understanding, whereas my clinical class where I'm dealing with people, I excelled in that class. So yes, it is a wide range, but these professors want you to succeed. So they're going to work with you. Most of the class sizes, mine was 14, which I think is probably pretty small. I know in Northwestern in Chicago, they take about 40 students, and half of their course is online, even without COVID, and the other half is done in person. So all of the master's programs operate just a shade differently. There's a school in Texas where they actually operate, their schooling is instead of starting in August, they start in January. So their residency time is different. Another school in Texas, they actually include their residency in with their master's program. So the schools operate a little differently, which is definitely why it's a good idea to check out INCOPE, which is this website that's listed here. It's got all of your information that you're going to need to know about residency, what schools are offering, what the application process is. They're going to be able to help guide you there. And if you have questions, they're very sweet. You can call them. They're located in Virginia, and they're wonderful people as well.
Thank you for that. So our question's about an exam. How did you prepare for the graduate record exam before applying to a prosthetics program? And do you
So
have
I wasn't really preparing for boards prior to getting into my master's. I was just praying I was going to get into my master's program. So I really was just focusing on my schooling for undergrad, really getting some good resume pointers on my resume for them to take, studying more for the GRE. The GRE was required at the time. I think right now they're actually waiving it due to COVID, but I imagine that the GRE will be required in future classes to come. So studying and prepping for that honestly is the best way to study and prep to get into grad school. And then once you get into grad school, then start worrying about that first board exam. But there's really no point in worrying about it prior because grad school is going to teach you what you need to know for that exam.
Thanks for sharing that. It's really reassuring to hear because a lot of us are always thinking about our future and what's the next step, which kind of leads into this question of like, did you take the MCAT or did you know that you wanted no part of medical school as you went into this career path?
So I didn't even take the MCAT. I knew from pretty early on in high school that this was my path. So kind of fortunate that I didn't waste some of my time with having to worry about the MCAT. I'm very thankful that I didn't have to take it. The GRE probably was much easier, but obviously still something you have to study for. I did use the Kaplan course for the GRE and loved it. I am not someone who is good with tests. Test taking is not my strong suit, but knowing that ahead of time, I really built my resume up. I had a lot of clinical hours going in, saying I had rotated at these different places. I had some recommendation letters from other prosthetists that weren't my family to say, yes, she knows what this field is about. She wants to go in it. So I really tried to beef up my interview and my resume, knowing that testing isn't my strong suit.
Thank you for that sentence. Like, it was so relatable. I totally feel you in that. I'm not a great test taker as well.
It's okay. You can still go into the medical profession despite what everyone else makes you think.
Right. Okay. So how do you balance your social life with work?
So I am really fortunate where I work now. It is a very 8 to 5 job. So when I leave here, I'm not taking work home with me. I'm not stressed the way that this company is set up. It's just really nice. So prior to where I'm at now, yes, there was a little bit more of balancing a social life, but now actually being in the field, like I leave and I go home and I get to go home and be with my husband and my dog. So I'm not really having to stress about that. But yes, during residency and in grad school, balancing that is very hard. Time management is absolutely key. I make lots of lists, and when I get to cross things off, if I've crossed so many off, okay, I get to go have playtime. But managing that is semi-complicated, but figuring out what works for you, making lists or doing things in a journal or a calendar, really that time management is very beneficial in figuring out what your social life is, because you do have to still have a social life. You have to remain sane. And if your head is in a book for all of grad school, you're going to miss out on a lot. So learning to balance that is important.
For sure, definitely. We got some questions about some personal stories that some people have. So someone's a college athlete in this chat. Someone is also amputee in this chat. One of the questions we got was, do you think in the future there will be advancements made in prosthetics for amputees to possibly return to sports, or is that a far-fetched idea?
No, it's not even far-fetched now. So back in Arkansas, there is a track runner, and his name is Hunter Woodall. He is awesome. Follow him on social media. I love him. So he's a bilateral amputee, and he was born that way. And they told him that he would really never be able to be any type of athlete. And he is the first person in the entire United States who is running at a Division I college as an amputee. So it's not that he has run in the Paralympics and he wins gold when he goes there, but he is running with able-bodied people and running against them and is winning. So he is killing it, and he's a great person to follow. He's hysterical too. But so getting patients back in, if they're wanting to become athletes, like that is absolutely a possibility. There's only because I just came from Arkansas, so I know more Arkansas stats, but there's a cheerleader at the U of A also. And I mean, she's being thrown up doing baskets and tumbling, and she has nothing holding her back. So it's totally possible. You have to also, though, get your body ready for that as well. It's not just up to your prosthetist to be able to get you going. Like, you have to put in the work too. So sometimes I'll have a patient come in and they're like, oh, well, I want to be able to tap dance after I get my prosthesis. I'm like, okay, well, did you tap dance before? And they're like, well, no, I've never done it before. I'm like, okay, well, let's have some realistic expectations, because if you've never tapped before, I don't know if now is going to be the time. I would love for you to prove me wrong, but sometimes we have to bring it back a little bit. But most of the time, if a patient wants to do something, I'm like, let's go for it. I will work as hard as you work. So if you're putting it in, I'm going to be putting it in as well. But so to the athlete, yes, absolutely. There are lots of amputees that are already doing it. The Paralympics are amazing. And just if you ever get a chance to watch it, I think that theirs is starting, the summer one anyways, is starting in May or June, but they are awesome. You can watch them online, and these athletes are absolutely insane. Amy Purdy is another one. She's a snowboarder. She's amazing. Brennan Hucks, she's great. I don't know if you watched the Super Bowl, but there was, her last name is Long. She's a bilateral below knee amputee, and she's a Paralympic swimmer. So yes, there are no limitations with prosthetics as long as you are able to put in that work as well.
Thank you for that inspiration. Our next question is again about your degree. Would you recommend having a psychology background before entering this field?
So, psychology worked for me because I was very passionate about it. I almost majored in kinesiology, which probably would have benefited me just as well. I think at that point in time, you really have to figure out what's best for you. I'm by no means saying that psychology is the best degree that you need to have to go into this field. It's just what worked for me and my personality and the way my brain worked. Whereas some of my other classmates, they were totally engineers and they benefited from it extremely. So, and my kinesiology major classmates, they also did really well because there is a lot of muscle knowledge that's needed for this. And they were kind of a step ahead in the game in that aspect in comparison to me. So I'm by no means saying that psych is the best degree to have. It's really just what worked for me.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing that message. Another question is kind of on the field of prosthesis and orthotists in general. Do you see in the future that there's going to be a shift to having more doctorates in prosthetics and orthotists, like let's see in physical therapy?
Yes, I do. I do see that in the future. Everything with this field prior to what, I don't know, 15-ish years ago, a master's degree wasn't even required. Actually, master's degrees were optional. It was a certificate program. And then I think just a couple of years ago, it is now required that you have a master's degree to be able to go into this field. So it is constantly evolving. Like I said, it's just a couple steps behind a typical someone else who's in the medical profession, but I definitely foresee it going to having a doctorate in this field, which honestly would be awesome because right now we're having to get prescriptions from doctors. And while that's good for checks and balances, sometimes we're waiting on notes and waiting on different things from a doctor when we really know what this patient needs. And if we could just kind of do it, that would be awesome. But yeah, I think it will eventually go to that. I think it'll take a while for it to get that way, but I think that it will.
Hopefully it will. Okay, so our next question is a two-part question. Have you worked with any pediatric patients? And if so, could you elaborate on any nuisances for prostheses for children?
Any what for? What was the?
Like anything difficult or
Oh,
different with child prosthetics.
Gotcha. So being at Georgia Tech for undergrad, it was right where we had Children's of Atlanta. So we got to rotate and do a lot of work with CHOA there. So I did get some exposure there. But then when I went to my residency site in Arkansas, there was also a children. So most of the pediatric patients were going to the Children's of Little Rock. So I didn't have a ton of experience with children. I do love children because they are so excited about every single thing you bring to them. So the test socket part of the prosthetic treatment plan, what is in this picture right here that says never give up, with pediatric patients, we always called it their glass slipper, especially with the young girls, and they absolutely loved it. They felt like they were getting to be princesses, and it is literally the best thing working with kids. Now, a tough thing with kids is that they are always growing. So you are seeing them on such a regular basis, and being able to design that prosthesis kind of like an onion is what we say. So you're able to peel some layers off so that they can continue to wear it as they grow. You will eventually have to remake it, just like with an adult. Just because we make them one prosthesis in the beginning, that's not the prosthesis they wear for the rest of their life. They're going to change, and they are going to come and continue to see their prosthetist. That's why your relationship with your prosthetist is so important. I'm a huge proponent, I'm kind of going off script here, huge proponent of talking with new amputees. I'm like, look, you really have to have a good relationship with your prosthetist. You are not a lizard. Your limb is not growing back, and you are going to have to feel comfortable and confident with your prosthetist. You're going to have to vibe with them and make sure that that suits you. If that's me, great. If it's not, I totally encourage you to go meet with some other prosthetist and find what suits you, because this is a lifelong relationship. It's not a one and done type thing. So being able to have that real conversation with them and know that it's okay if they don't want me. It's okay if they want someone else. Whatever is going to be the best for them relationship wise is going to give them the best prosthetic results in the long run.
There's another question asking, do you think that the O&P field is mostly a male field, or do you think a lot of women work with you as well?
So previously, it was absolutely a male dominated field. I mean, there were no females in it. The class above me was, I don't know, 9 males and the rest were females. And then in my class, it was 50-50. And I know now some of the classes that are coming through, there's a lot more females, which is awesome. But I knew that it was going to be something that I was going to have to work through as a female. I went in and I was the only female prosthetist for years. And that's okay. I had to change some people's viewpoints on females in the world of prosthetics because it just wasn't there. When we would go to national meetings, when we went to our state meeting, I was the only female prosthetist ever. The only other females that were even at the state meeting were people who were the manufacturers who were there to sell and support their different types of components. I was literally the only female prosthetist. Obviously now that is starting to change, and lots more females are getting into it, which is awesome. But getting into it, when I got into it, I had to overcome a lot of that because they think that I was a young female who didn't know anything, and their old guy who was a prosthetist who, you know, was just very different than I was. Having to overcome that was a really cool lesson for me. And it's something that I still deal with. I have patients that come in every now and then that are like, "You're the prosthetist?" And I'm like, "Yep, this is what you get. If you don't like it, you can leave." But most of the time they don't. But yeah, so now more females are coming in, which is great. It's kind of similar to physical therapy. Physical therapy used to be a male dominated field, and now it's a female dominated field. So it's really cool to be able to see the females really kick butt and get in there.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing that. I'm glad that this is where the future is headed, and yeah, that we're moving away from that. Let's see. Our next question is, what are some of the emotions when talking to a patient right after they are amputated?
I mean, you can get just about anything. You can get someone who is straight up in shock because it was traumatic, someone who is very angry at the entire world, who really does not want to talk to you. You can have people that are excited to learn about it, people that are anxious, nervous. It's really a broad spectrum, and you don't really know what you're getting until you get in there and you say, "Hey, I'm Malone. I'm going to potentially be your prosthetist. How are you today?" Like, you really don't know what's going through their head. So being prepared to go through all of those emotions is entirely possible. And sometimes they start out really good and then they get into you and they're super depressed because they've been in a wheelchair now for 2 weeks and they're having a hard time functioning. And so keeping them out of that lull of depression is huge. Depression is high in brand new amputees, and sometimes even after they've been walking for a while. It just takes a while sometimes to get them used to their new normal and feeling comfortable and confident in that. So it is a very large span of emotions, and you learn how to deal with it. A lot of it is just experience and learning how to talk to them, but as long as you're showing love and that you care and that you genuinely want them to do well, most of the time they respond very well.
Wow, thank you. So our next question is also a two-part question. Do you have any experience working with military veterans? And if so, can you elaborate on some cases you've had?
Yeah, so where I'm at now, we actually have one of the VA contracts. So I do get to work with vets. I will say, when you hear about working with veterans, it's a little bit different than what you probably think. So most of the time, if you have an active vet that was hurt in while they were in combat, they get the choice to go wherever they want to. So whether they want to go where the VA sends them, or if they have somewhere very specific they want to go, they get to go there. So the vets that we're getting are ones a lot of the time that have vascular disease or happen to have a traumatic accident when they were home. So it is really cool to get to talk to them. It just puts things into perspective. I love hearing about where they've been and where they've traveled and their favorite places. Most of them have no filter, which I absolutely love. But some of them are hard cases. They might have a different, their limb might have a couple of abnormalities that you're having to work into the socket just due to overuse of their limbs and their joints in combat. So having to go through that is definitely something that we have to work through together. I actually just fit a vet. I think he's my most recent Instagram post, but he was in the Navy and he is awesome. And we put him in a vacuum socket and he has a great foot on him and he is absolutely loving it. And he's so cool to be able to work with on a regular basis. And actually, he didn't lose his limb due to vascular or he wasn't in combat. He lost his limb in a work accident and the VA is covering everything. So just because they're veterans doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be working with them because they lost their limb in combat. But they are really interesting people. And if you get a chance to chat with them, they'll chat with you all day long most of the time. So I highly encourage that.
It's nice to know about the different kind of people you meet with kids and veterans and athletes. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So going off on that, we'll have our last question pertaining to patients like that. How do you deal with patients that have lost a limb they have used a lot before amputation, such as a painter losing their hand or arm, like a limb that's been very valuable to the rest before their amputation?
Yeah, so that's really tough. Upper extremity patients in general are just tough, more tough psychologically. If I was going to have to lose a limb, I would like to lose a leg. Losing an upper extremity is a much more difficult situation just because you are having to really try to get back the movement and the function of digits. And there's obviously a lot of motion in your hands. So being able to replace that it honestly is irreplaceable, but we do the absolute best that we can. The technology that they have out there now with microprocessor hands are pretty phenomenal. There's lots of YouTube videos on them. The iLim is great. That's one that you can search and it's easy to remember because of Mac. But being able to replace all of those is a lot more psychologically involved than just fitting someone with a lower limb prosthesis. There's a lot more functionality that goes into creating their prosthesis and a lot of occupational therapy, a lot. That's actually where they're really going to learn to master whatever it is that they need to do to be able to help feel one again with their life, honestly. So it's definitely tough, but like I said, if you want to be able to do it, you can do it. I'm going to supply you with all of the tools that you need, but you're going to have to also put the effort in there as well.
For sure. So thank you so much for sharing that, your answers to these questions. Before we wrap up here, is there any final advice you'd like to give us as pre-health students, possibly some of us going into P&O ourselves?
I mean, like I've said before, getting out there and really understanding what this field is about is huge. If y'all want to message me at any point in time on Instagram, like I will always answer your questions. I think that what y'all are doing here is absolutely amazing, and any way that I can help, I'm always down to. So for future potential prosthetists, like keep it up, keep your head in the game. You can do it. It is so worthwhile. And I really just don't think that you can go wrong if this is something that you want to do. Like, you'll love this field. I love my job every day. Yes, it is still a job, but I go home every day being fulfilled, which is way more than I could ever ask for.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us and speaking with us today and just taking the time to talk to us. I'm just going to share my screen really quick. Can you all see this? Yeah. Okay. So if you guys want to reflect on today's session, that was amazing, by the way. You have some questions here. So what brought you to this session today? What are 3 major takeaways you got from this presentation? And what do you want to learn more about? So this is a really great time for you guys to really reflect and think about your goals. I'll leave these questions up just a little bit longer so y'all can take a picture of it or whatever you want. Okay, so to reiterate again, if you want to be a published writer, pre-health shadowing has a wonderful opportunity for you guys. You can submit articles, reflections, reviews, success stories, anything you want, and you can submit your work with the link in the chat to potentially be published on pre-health shadowing's website. Okay. And if you want to be a part of pre-health shadowing in our journey here and what we're doing, you can apply to be a volunteer or a team member. So volunteers will help out with anything that we need, like you can go from making a TikTok or helping out writing grants or helping the fundraising team, you know. If you want more information, you can also contact our volunteer coordinator, Hannah, who was our co-host today. And she will also drop the link in the chat to be a volunteer. And for our team members, so this is a really great opportunity for you guys to gain leadership, learn what pre-health shadowing is all about and how everything works. We do so much, and we definitely try to keep this opportunity for you guys free and accessible. And if you want to learn more, you can go ahead on our website and check out the links. Okay, and if you can, please donate. Pre-health shadowing really does rely on donations solely, and we want to keep this opportunity completely free for you guys. And if you cannot donate, that's totally okay. You can also take a screenshot of the QR code, which is on the screen, and you can send it to someone who possibly can donate. Anything helps, $1, $2, 50 cents, you know, anything helps. We definitely have a lot of students, over 20,000, so we want to keep this running for you guys. And this is how you're going to receive your certificate to verify your shadowing hours today. So you can go on prehealthshadowing.com and then you can look for our speaker's name or profile. And then you're gonna click sign up for this course, and then it's completely free, so don't worry. You're just gonna take a 10 question assignment, and it's 30 minutes long. You have 30 minutes to take it. It's only 10 questions though. It's not meant to be super hard. It's just to make sure that you were there throughout the entire session. And you can also get your certificate from this. So if you get a 70% or higher, please do not try to take the quiz again, because you might lose your certificate if you do not pass the second time. You do get 2 tries. 70% or higher is what you are aiming for. Don't worry if you have like a 70 or an 80, like your score will not show up on your certificate. You'll get it no matter what, okay? And this is super important. At the very end of the course, you want to click finish this course and download your certificate. If you do not do this, you will not receive your certificate. And of course, if you have any questions or problems, you can email us at info@prehealthshadowing.com. And if you miss any part of the session today, like let's say you came in a little late due to a class or something, you can definitely go to our YouTube channel, and we will have the recording uploaded by today. And our YouTube channel is Pre-Health Shadowing, and you can also watch previous sessions, and you can also still take their quizzes so you can get those certifications. Okay. And be sure to catch us on our upcoming sessions. If you want to learn more or know who is coming up and what they do, you can also go to our website at prehealthshadowing.com. And we want to thank you all for coming, and we appreciate your attendance and hope to see you at our next session. If you have any questions, you can leave some questions in the chat, or unmute yourself and ask.
This is the end of the virtual chatting session. You may now end the call. It is